Our story begins with a white, infinite void. It stretches on as far as the eye can see, taking up the entire horizon line. And as the players look at this void, they recall that they are looking through a window. And as they recall that they are looking through a window, they recall that they are looking through the windows of a ship. And as they recall that they are on a ship, they recall that they are all members of a crew on board that ship. They have stations such as engineering, communications, navigation, and a science station equipped with external scanners. Each of the players had been informed beforehand during character creation that they would each be assigned ranks and positions on board the ship as crew members. They were not told where the ship would be traveling or what its purpose would even be. And so, the players were essentially as lost as their characters were, with full-on amnesia, a result of whatever this void stuff was that they were now currently flying through. The captain, an NPC, was a level-headed man. He acquired most of his strength through his hardcore dedication to his goddess, the Raven Queen. He immediately sprung into action. Communications! Do we have anybody that we can reach on the line? The communications officer rolled a nat 20. No one was on the other end of the line. Science station, can you tell us where we are? The science station reported that they were in a void, and that it was endless in every direction. Navigation, do you know exactly where we're headed? The heading on the compass did not seem to make sense, as north was now up. Engineering, are the engines even running right now? Engineering reported that the engines were in fact running at maximum capacity. The helmsman was immediately ordered to bring the ship to a stop. He did so by engaging the reverse thrusters for some time until it seemed to feel like they weren't moving anymore. Without any elements to measure on the outside of the ship, or any horizon on which to judge their current speed, it was basically impossible to tell if they even were currently in motion, or what direction that motion even was in. It was at this time that the captain, sitting behind his desk, was starting to have a bit of a crisis of sorts. He examined closely an effigy he had on his desk of the Raven Queen, and he was quite uncertain whether the effigy actually was the Raven Queen and was his goddess, to which he had dedicated his life, or if it was simply a material representation of the deity, and that she wasn't actually being held in his hand right now. The now quite formerly level-headed captain, in a mere number of seconds, was suddenly reaching inside of his desk drawer for his snub-nosed revolver. After first pointing it at himself, he thought better of it. After all, his goddess was a goddess of death, and taking as many people with him as possible would probably please her in some way. So he pointed it at the front window, hoping that the vacuum of the void would do the job of killing everyone for him. This, of course, was very quickly picked upon by the first officer, who was just standing over his shoulder. A monk by trade, he was very easily able to subdue the captain and disarm him, and the crew very quickly decided to tie him up and drag him to the captain's ready room, where they had a long debate about what to do next exactly. Over the captain's repeated shouts of "Mutiny! This is mutiny!" behind his gag, the crew decided that the best course of action would be to take an inventory of what they had available on the ship, and to stow the captain in a storage closet. 6 of the 10 players had never actually played Dungeons & Dragons before, but the ones who had played very quickly assumed that this must be some sort of survival campaign, and so they began taking inventory of what they had. There was a hydroponics bay, a mess hall, a food processor. The ship's engineering bay and engines seemed to be fueled by any kind of matter that were inserted into them. The ship had a storage of water as well as water recyclers, so dehydration wasn't going to be a problem. What was going to be a problem was food, as well as fuel. Both of those things seemed to come from the same source, which was any matter they could find, and matter was something that they had in short supply. The hydroponics bay was mostly used for maintaining their oxygen. The players had each beforehand been asked if they would like to bring any personal plants on board, and none of them had elected to bring any edible plants. One chose, in fact, to bring a plant that ate meat. So, naturally, the players, as they started to lose hope, began drawing straws and debating on who would be eaten first. Fortunately, the dwarven security officer, upon inspecting the airlock, made an interesting discovery. There was a bright orange safe, labeled "In case of catastrophic memory loss." It was written in Dwarven, Elvish, Draconic, Undercommon, and Common. The safe instantly opened to their touch and revealed a potion bottle. The bottle, however, was not meant for consumption. Instead, instructions on the bottle clearly indicated that it should be poured into a monitor. The ship's monitors all had a small opening on the top, which was used for motion picture potions, a sort of entertainment that they could use on board. This motion picture potion, in fact, was a documentary. Well, it started out as a documentary anyway. It showed images of their homeland, a place called Ukrainia, which was currently undergoing an attack of sorts from a mysterious white infinite void that was eating away at the landscape. Any town destroyed by the void was immediately forgotten. Even people with close relatives in towns consumed by the void would forget that their relatives had even existed. It was theorized that the void had actually been consuming their land for nearly 25 years before someone finally noticed it. To defend the cities of Ukrainia against the void, a massive project to build a void wall was put into place, building the wall entirely out of a rare material called mystonium. Mystonium has strong anti-magic properties, and when inserted into the void, it could actually be removed, unlike literally anything else. Small-scale tests conducted seemed to prove that the void could in fact be stopped by building walls of mystonium. It was then that the documentary shifted, almost becoming another documentary about a crew on board a void ship. After a brief description of the ship's origin as the Mountain Spleen, a large rock hewn entirely from mystonium gathered by dwarves, it became blatantly apparent that the documentary was about the ship that they currently resided in, as on the outside it appeared to be just a big floating rock in a sea of white nothingness. The scene then changed to an impromptu press conference, where the players took control of their characters in the past, and they were able to basically describe their characters' backstories, explaining reasons for why they would go on a suicidal trip past the event horizon of the void into essentially infinite nothingness to try to determine its cause and possibly even find a solution to it, and why they would be willing to be forgotten. It was here that we learned some interesting things about many of the characters, such as that the security officer used to be a rogue and worked for Xanathar's Thieves Guild. The first officer, Dragonborn, was in fact the father of many children to whom he owed multiple alimony payments, and he just decided that was too much work. The Drow, surprising absolutely nobody, was revealed to actually be a sort of evil supervillain who had a lair and minions and everything, and this was essentially his punishment. As the players got to know each other a lot more after this session, they began to distrust each other a lot more as well. And that is when things started to happen. Not PvP things, no. Things got interrupted by a scratching sound coming from the outside of the ship. Something loud, something ferocious, something with claws.